We live in a time of deep division, hurry, and competing allegiances. Jesus' invitation to follow me is not merely to agree with his ideas, but to apprentice our entire lives to him. We are called to a lifetime of learning to abide in his presence, embody his life, and join his mission in the world. This series explores what it means to follow Jesus deeply and faithfully in this cultural moment. Following Jesus in a divided age.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Still morning time. We're continuing our series, Following Jesus in a Divided Age. And I don't know about you, there's something I've come to realize in my own walk with Jesus. And it hasn't come to me instantaneously. It didn't come to me immediately, and it didn't come to me easily. It's something I've had to learn the hard way. You ever learned tough lessons the hard way? Yeah. Some of you know what I mean. I've always said that when it comes to my relationship with God, I've learned that if I don't learn it in the summer, I have to take it again at wintertime. If I don't get it the first time, I'll be back in summer school. Well, what I've learned in my own life is that spirituality requires intentionality. I will not naturally drift towards God. I've learned that no matter how hard I desire to be with God, I will not naturally get deep with God. But without effort, I will be distracted from God. It takes no effort for me to get distracted from God. But it takes a lot of intentionality for me to grow into the likeness for which I was called. Basically, what I've learned that spiritual maturity requires effort. It requires effort. And a lot of us don't like that. We live in a world of instant gratification. But I've had to learn that I'm not going to get holy by accident. I'm not going to grow just by passing through. No one stumbles into Christ-likeness. I was sitting with a friend of mine from here at Oasis. We get together every now and again, we talk, and we were talking yesterday, and I was telling him that I've learned for the first time in my life the practicality of Christianity. That for so long I thought, I'm going to pray, I'm going to fast, and God's going to zap me into holiness. That, in fact, I don't know about you, but when I got baptized, I thought, this is great. I'm going to get baptized, I'm going to get a clean slate, and if I happen to stumble out of the pool and pass away, well, I got a free ticket to heaven. In my mind, baptism was my graduation. And I didn't realize it was just the beginning of my relationship with God. I always caution people who want to get baptized quickly, because in the back of their minds, I know there's something in the back that says, all I have to do is do this, and all my problems will be solved. I'm going to grow. I'm going to be like God. It's going to be great. And anybody who's been baptized, that is anybody who's made the commitment to follow Jesus and take life with God seriously, know that the minute you make that commitment, that's when your trouble begins. We had a few people getting baptized earlier this year, and I told them that once you get baptized, that's when you're going to need church more, not less. The reality is, I've learned that if I don't train my heart to follow Jesus, my heart will train itself to follow something else. That's my big aha moment. That if I am not intentional with how I guide my heart will guide me somewhere else. And in this season, in this moment, in this culture, in this temperature, in this time that we live in, we are yearning, hungry. The world is looking for those who are committed to following Jesus intentionally, who are hungry to become the kind of people God saw before the world began. But I know what I'm talking about today is tough work. It's not easy. In fact, I don't even want to preach it. Because by preaching it, you might be fooled into thinking, I'm living it. But like I've said before, my sermons are for me. You just get to be in the audience. I preach it because I need it. Because like you, I would love instant Jesus. In fact, I wish Jesus came with just add water. Y'all don't know about that? You guys make stuff from scratch? Yeah. I wish I could just say a prayer, get baptized, do a ritual, wear a cross, put on a t-shirt that says, I am Christian, and all my problems get solved. I wish I could get microwave holiness. And if I don't, maybe something happens that day that isn't quite right, I could just add 30 seconds more. I wish life was that easy. I wish there was drive-through transformation. I could order it at the window and and if it's Chick-fil-A, they'll know exactly how to cultivate that thing for me. You guys don't have good Chick-fil-A here, so. Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell? Chick-fil-A in Colorado used to have a cauliflower chicken burger. Obviously not real chicken, real good stuff. It was crunchy, tasty, and I came out here and they're like, what are you talking about? But I love the idea of being able to just do one thing and all of a sudden everything I've ever wanted happens. But who understands that nothing in life works like that? Nothing in life works. At the beginning of this year, I had my goals. I said, I'm going to take care of myself. I did some research. I went into LA Fitness, and the guy was introducing me to all these things. I signed up, and I said, I'll have a companion with me. I had a plan in mind. Tiffany and I are going to do this in the morning. We're going to drop off the kids to school. It's going to be great, and I'm going to have the time to do this. It's going to be awesome. And he said, and you get 30 days before you make, I don't need it. I am committed. Ask me how many times I've been back to LA Fitness. But here's the reality. The same way my body needs training in order to become the body I want for my summer beach vibes, my spirit requires the same training. Following Jesus takes training, not trying. And what I've had to learn is that I can try to be like Jesus all I want. But until I'm ready to train to be like Jesus, I'm not getting started. Following Jesus requires training. 1 Timothy 4 verse 7, Paul is talking to the young pastor, the young minister, Timothy. He's saying to Timothy, here's what you need to do. In 1 Timothy 4 verse 7, he says, have nothing to do with godless myths. What kind of myths? In other words, they sound religious, but they're not. And old wives' tales, things that people used to say to each other. Rather, train yourself to be what? Train yourself to be godly. Paul does not say to Timothy, hey, keep trying to be godly. Try to be like God. Paul says to Timothy, listen, have nothing to do with these godless myths, these ideas that if you just do this or do that, you're going to get to this kind of result or this outcome. In fact, you're not going to get there by listening to these old wives' tales that tell you calculate 1 + 1, put 2 crystals by the window, and then pray at 12 and 3. No. All of those things are myths. What you need to do is learn how to train yourself to be godly. Train. And he says in verse 8, for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for what? All things. Paul says, you know that in order to grow physically, you've got to train your body, and that has some value, but godliness has value for everything, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. Following Jesus requires a greater intensity in my spirituality than it does in my body. A greater intensity. It requires greater intentionality. When we start off by saying, I'm going to try to be like this, I'm going to try to be like that. I remember I just graduated from my CPE first unit. And as I was graduating, thank you, Flora was there, it was awesome. As I was graduating, I remember my supervisor coming up to my wife, and he said to her, I love this man. And this is why when I cut sharp. Because if I'm dull, that is, if I'm going around telling him what's the matter, what's going on, then that's painful. You don't do surgery with dull knives. You do surgery with sharp knives. And I remember the moment when he was extremely sharp with me. I remember how that felt. I remember him asking me, how do you feel with what I just said? And I felt seen. He was able to look and see what the issue is and say directly, here is your problem, and here's what you need to do. You see, many of us, when it comes to Christianity, we are stuck at trying. I was going through a case, and in that case, when he said that to me, I was going through a case, and it's called a verbatim. And basically, you go through with the class the process you took a patient through and what you said to that patient and how that patient responded and what you said. And you're supposed to write down, what were you feeling during that time? How did you express yourself? What were you reading from the patient? And over again, I would write down something like, I saw the patient was struggling with confusion, and I was trying to tell her, and I was trying to tell them, and I was trying to. And he looked at me in the middle of the class, and he said, class, what's Jose's problem? And they all said a bunch of things, and he said, Jose is always trying. Jose's stuck at trying, but he's never doing. Jose tries this, it doesn't work. He tries that, it doesn't work. He tries this, it doesn't work. He tries, but he does not consistently do. And you're surrounded by 6 other people looking at you. And then he says, how do you feel about what I just said? And then one of my classmates, he's really awesome. He's a former pastor like me. And whenever they get on me, he goes, but I don't see that in Jose. Jose, is that true? And I'm sitting there like, and all in my mind, I go back at all the things I've tried. You see, trying keeps us stuck. Because when we try, we are relying on our own effort and our own willpower and our own capacity and our own ability to get the job done. Trying is arrogance. Training is humility. Trying is believing that if you just do it harder, if you just put in more, if you increase the intensity, somehow you're going to get there. And let's be honest with you. How long have you been trying? Training means I can't do it. Training means I don't know what to do. I think the hardest part of going to the gym is going there and watching everybody. You know, they're doing this, they're doing their sets, they're doing it, and then you're kind of looking around and there's all this stuff and like, okay, what do I do first? The humility to know you don't know what you're doing. So ask. Training is recognizing that I do not have what it takes to get me to the person that I've wanted to be. I need someone to train me. I need someone to tell me how to do this thing. Training is what it takes to follow Jesus. Jesus is literally inviting us into a training program called discipleship. And he says that at the end of my training program, you'll look like me. You won't have to ask, what would Jesus do? Because the real question will be, what is Jesus calling me to do right now? What would life look like if Jesus were me right here, right now? How does Jesus deal with marriages? How does Jesus deal with parenting? How does Jesus deal with addiction? How does Jesus deal with bad habits? This is what you invite Jesus into. Jesus, here I am. Show me. In Luke 14, verse 25, Jesus is getting popular. People are really getting excited about him. He's been making a lot of miracles. Things are moving along and things are getting great. And word on the street is that you're going to get a good time around Jesus. You will never run out of food. If it just so happens that you forget your lunch, somebody will just offer theirs and he'll multiply it. If you happen to be at a wedding and they run out of wine, he'll say, no problem, let's take the water, and you'll get the best wine you'll ever have. Life is fun without Jesus, and it just so happens there are no ambulances or police or emergency services around the corner, and one of you dies, he'll just wake you back up again. This is great. Jesus was the life of the party. And it says in Luke 14, verse 25, large crowds were traveling with Jesus. How many? Large crowds, not one crowd or two crowds, large crowds. They were traveling with Jesus. This is not just a one-time stop. These people are picking up their bags, going along wherever he goes. They follow him. He crosses the lake. They cross the lake. They're hanging around him. In your mind, in my mind, these are committed people. These are folks who are willing to leave their families behind, leave their houses behind. They're following him, and it seems like to you and I, they would consider themselves followers of Jesus. Jesus looks around at the large crowds. And you would think his speech would sound a little bit like this. I know you have left father, mother, and people to come around and be with me. I just want to say thank you. to each of you for being around and hanging out. And I just want to let you know, I take notice that you know, it's been the last time, I mean, we slept was back in Galilee, and now, you know, we're all the way here, you know, around Jerusalem, and you guys are still around. I just want to say how great you guys are. That's the kind of speech I would expect. Jesus goes in verse 26. He looks around. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. Now, Jesus, this is the thank you part of the campaign. This is where he's supposed to be, you know, telling us how happy you are that we've, you know, dropped all our stuff and decided to come along. This is not the right speech. I mean, if Peter was his campaign manager, he would say, hey, bro, we're losing people. It's not the right time. He looks around at the height of his movement when everyone is following him, and he turns and he helps them secure what commitment to Jesus looks like. This is what training looks like. He looks at them and he says, I see that you're following me, but if you really want to come to me, you must hate even your own life. Let me help you. If you want to become a follower of Jesus, you must start training, no longer trying, and your first step in the training program is to learn to focus. Following Jesus requires focus. Being a follower of Jesus is not about saying yes to Jesus once, but saying no to everything else every day. What Jesus was telling those followers of him, those people who are surrounding him, is that it's not enough to just come after me. You can't take everything else with you. You have to learn to hate your mother, wife, children, brothers, and sisters. And of course, now many of you would go, hate is such a strong word. I'm pretty sure you've heard several sermons on this before. And if you haven't, I'll give you the quick synopsis of it. When Jesus is talking about the word hate, that word meno in the Greek, in its original language, he is not saying that you should hate as in to despise someone, but that your love for him is so strong that your love for other people looks like hate. That your commitment and focus to him is so deep and is so stable and is so focused that everything else is subpar. Even your own life. In other words, Jesus is saying, watch this. Jesus is saying that in order to follow me, you have to have the kind of focus that you learn to say no to everything else. It was Steve Jobs, when he was talking about Apple, that said that being innovative is great and it's incredible, but simplicity is the key to business. And keeping things simple, meaning you know what to say yes to, but more importantly, you know how to say no to great things. In other words, there will always be something else that's just as good. But learning to say no to the good stuff. You see, when we talk about Christianity, we're always talking about behavioral modification, and we always talk about sin and holiness. So all your life you learn that sin is bad, just as good. But here's the thing, you never learn the in-betweens. And I was talking to my friend, and I said, man, the tough part, I've been reading this book called Practicing the Way, and this is my second time reading it, and as I'm reading this book, it hit me that the author says, what do you do in your chill moments? In your relaxed moments? In those moments where you rest? How you spend your time tells you what your heart runs to. And I realized for me, when I've had a long day and it's been rough, I'd like to, watch a little MasterChef. I'm not thinking, let me go and read the book of Luke. Hello? I'm the only one. After a week of prayer, I feel like I'm a superhero. After one day of fasting, I think I've done enough now. Am I the only one? I read through the book of Romans. I read Romans 1. I don't need to read Romans 2 today. I can now move on to the other stuff. Well, what Jesus is telling me is that following him requires so much focus that every hour of every day, I'm constantly learning how to practice the presence of God in everything that I'm doing. And that's why Paul says, pray without ceasing. In other words, notice, Jesus is not telling you he will not accept you as his disciple. He does not say he will not want you as his disciple. This is a warning for how to be his disciples. He says, you cannot be my disciple unless you do this, because it will be impossible. The world around you has too much pull. You will not be able to truly follow me if you are not constantly holding on to me, because there is a vibrant effort to make sure you do not come to me. Everything in life is geared to make sure you don't come to God. In fact, Paul tells us anyone who wants to be godly will be persecuted. It doesn't say anyone who's godly. You don't have to be godly. You just have to want to be. And many of us, we don't take this seriously. We don't take this following Jesus as war, and that's exactly what it is. When I say yes to Jesus, I'm saying no to his enemy. And life is not just going to let me go, oh, that's so cool, Missy. You want to follow God? So happy for you. I'm cheering you on. No. The enemy goes, you want to follow God? We'll see about that. Jesus says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone will see it and will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Or suppose the king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 10,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Are those the words of Jose? No. Those are the words of Jesus. In the same way, listen, following Jesus is like building something. You're trying to build a life. And in order to build a life, you have to see, what do you have? What is it? Do you have everything you need to complete it? And in order to get everything you need to complete it, you have to give up everything you already have. Any dependence on anything other than Christ won't cut it. It's like a king going to war. Listen to these comparisons. Someone building, someone going to war. In other words, Jesus is telling us that following him is a serious endeavor. It's not just a religious commitment on a weekend. It's not just showing up at church. It's about reordering your life around Jesus. So to follow Jesus, we must ruthlessly eliminate everything that takes our time away from God. This is the hard part for me. Can I confess? Okay, I'm going to confess. Last night, we were at rehearsal, had a long day, and I'm heading home, 20-minute home, and I'm like, oh, what podcast should I listen to? And I'm like, maybe I should listen to some music, just listen to some nice music heading home. I'm like, or maybe I'm thinking through all the things. I'm like, oh, there's this book I was reading. Let me read that. And then I'm on my way home, I'm like, oh, okay, where's my heart, my mind going to? I said, okay, God. I put on Luke. I'll listen to the scriptures. And as I listened, my heart started drifting away. Looked at the map, and I said, oh, I wonder what's on Facebook. And I remember myself, you're driving. And I said, oh yeah, I'm listening to the Bible. That's what I'm doing. Do you know how many times I had to redirect my mind to listen to the scripture? And what I realized, folks, is this. In my own life, this is someone who studies the Bible, studies the scripture, prays, has to show up here. In my own life, I have to redirect myself several times to go back to what I'm actually hungry for. And when I got home, I was so excited that I stayed listening to the scriptures. Got home, got together with my family, fell asleep, woke up. God woke me up around 3 o'clock in the morning. He started putting names on my mind from this church of who I need to be praying for. I don't think I would have had that kind of wake up if I didn't sleep the way I slept. This isn't a rah-rah sermon. This is a confession. If we're going to be serious about following Jesus, it's going to take everything in our lives to do it. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be lots of good other opportunities, good things that stand in the way of the best thing. Remember what Jesus said to Martha? You have chosen to do a lot. There's a lot to do, but only one thing is necessary. There's always going to be a lot to do. We all have to admit that the desire to be with God is there. But in today's world, we lack the margin to be with God. We all have the desire to grow spiritually, but we lack the time to grow spiritually. We all want to know God more, want to know our Bibles more, want to spend more time in prayer, but we often don't have the time to do it. But studies show that most Americans spend thousands of hours in front of their screen. We seem to find the time to scroll. We have the time to watch the news. We have the time to watch our favorite TV show. We have the time to listen to our favorite radio episode. We have the time to do the things that entertain us. My message to you today is if you want to take following Jesus seriously in this age, you're going to have to be extremely judicious with your time. You can be anything God calls you to be, but that means you can't be everything else. Following Jesus means such radical focus on Jesus that it takes saying yes to him every day and saying no to everything else over and over and over again. Trying to be like Jesus is praying and wishing God forms you into his likeness. Training to be like Jesus is taking the time to focus your life in the direction of Jesus. That's why in Matthew 7, verse 24, Jesus writes, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into what? Practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he thought as one who had authority, Kal-El. That's what we were talking about at youth Sabbath school this morning. Because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. Friends, notice that both people built a house. And they built the house believing that their house was pretty firm. It's interesting that just listening to the words of Jesus makes you a builder. Both people heard the words of Jesus, and therefore they both built houses. But one of them heard the words and put them into practice. This has been the most transformative word in my life this last 2 weeks. Practice. My son has been practicing piano. He has a recital coming up in December, and he's so excited. I remember when he first started practicing, he wasn't quite good at it, so he would hate practice. And now that he's gotten better, he goes, Daddy, listen to me, I'm practicing. And he's playing it. He's like, look, like I know how to do it now. And because he knows how to do it now, he doesn't mind the practice. And he's excited about his recital. And he's excited about the fact that he knows the song well. He's excited because he's been practicing. And that experience changed my life. It transformed the way I see my walk with God. Before, if I fell, if I did something I knew I shouldn't have done, if I messed up in some way, I made that connected to my identity. I would go, man, I'm such a failure. When am I going to ever get this right? When is God going to change me? What is this? But then I realized that when Noah practiced, he would mess up a little bit, even though he knows it. And he'd go, oh, Daddy, wait, I know it. I'm going to do it again. It was with excitement because he knows I've done this right once. I can do this again. And even if I mess up a little bit, I can just start over because I know how to do this. I have practice. And Jesus is telling me that life with him, all it takes is practice. I'm not going to become this superhero spiritual person without practicing the words of Jesus. And I will never be able to try to do it. I have to practice to do it. And Jesus says, anyone who hears these words of mine, what words? Matthew 5-7, the Sermon on the Mount. In there, he's telling you what to practice to become like him. He says you should fast. In other words, if you want to become someone who has more self-control, then practice self-control by fasting. If you want to be more generous, then practice secretly giving. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. When I practice that, each time I practice, listen, this is so good. Each time I practice giving without telling someone, my heart goes, oh, are you a generous person? Yes, I am. Yeah. The more I practice it, the easier it becomes. And all of a sudden, watch, all of a sudden, I become generous. I remember a mentor of mine, he was my pastor, he was my first conference president. I said to him, I realized that I'm a nitpicker. I'm always pushing people towards perfection. That's how I am with myself. I'll watch my own sermons and go, oh, this is horrible. The whole time I'm listening to a sermon, I'm cringing. What in the world did these people listen to? I can't believe they stayed in the room. This is me criticizing myself. I'm a nitpicker. So I come into the room and I'm naturally a nitpicker. I'm like, oh, this could be better, that could be better, this could be better, that could be. And I realized I was driving the people who were being led by me crazy. And I told him, man, it's hard for me because I just see all the ways we can be better. And he said, I want you to practice something. Whenever you see something that could be better, thank the person for what they're already doing. Whenever you see something that could be better, thank them for where they are right now. And he said, I didn't know how to do this, so I literally started writing on index cards the things I saw my people doing. And so I started doing the same thing. I started learning to see people. Listen, folks, I got to tell you, I grew up with a parent who would walk into a clean room and say, why is that dust on the shelf? So the idea of thanking anybody was not part of my vocabulary. I had to learn how to do it. I had to learn to say thank you. I had to learn to appreciate people. I had to learn to be grateful by practicing it. And I'm nowhere near where I need to be, but I'm a whole lot better than I used to be. But it took practice. The reason why this word is so powerful for me is because it tells me that Jesus expects me to practice. And anyone who practices messes up. That's the good news, is that while I'm practicing, I might do the wrong note. I might sing off key. I might not shoot the ball right, but it takes practice. Steph Curry shoots the ball, and people are wowed, but they tell you Steph Curry in practice shoots thousands of balls. And so when he shoots the ball and he walks away, it's because he's been practicing. Holiness takes practice. Following Jesus takes practice. Following Jesus takes practice. He says, if you want to become a peacemaker, practice refusing to retaliate. If someone hits you on one side, give them the other. It's practice. We say, why would Jesus say these crazy things? If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Practice. He's saying if something is messing you up, turn around. Do whatever you have to do to cut it out. If you want to become more loving, practice praying for your enemies. You see, I used to think of these things as achievements. Things that I had to live up to. Become the kind of person who prays for the enemies. I never saw it as instruction manual from my trainer. Here's what I want you to practice this week. And it means that I might mess up in my practice, but because I'm practicing, I just start over. I just do it again. If you want to be more honest, practice simple speech. That's what Jesus says. Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. Don't add anything. No justification needed. Would you like to go? No. Why? Because it's a no. That's the hard part. My son is learning that. These are not things we achieve. These are the things we practice. So, band, you can come up. We're done. Here are your next steps for this week. Read Matthew chapter 5 through 7. These are the words of Jesus. Folks, I think we make Christianity so difficult, so complex when it doesn't need to be. Do you know that the first Christians, not one of them owned the Bible at home? Most Christians probably were only familiar with the first few chapters of the book of John. We have these crazy goals of, I'm going to read the whole Bible. That's really awesome. But let's just try living one chapter. Matthew 5 through 7. Let's do it. So 2 chapters. 3. See? Obviously, Verbal is my gift, math is not. Matthew 5 through 7. Here's what I'm looking for you to do. But that's right, 5, 6, 7. That makes sense. There you go. Thank you, doctor. That's why you're the doctor. Listen. I want you to read this not as an information package. I want you to go through it asking the Spirit, Holy Spirit, what is it one practice you're asking me to add to my tool belt? He talks about praying in a secret room. Could that be your one practice that you need to add to your life? It maybe prayer is something you don't do regularly and consistently. You don't have a space, a time, and a place to go to God in prayer. Maybe that's the practice you might want to add. Maybe it's been very hard for you to be generous, and so maybe giving is a practice you need to start adding to your life. Perhaps self-control is something that's been hard. Fasting once a week could be a practice that is necessary for you. And here's the thing, guys, it's called practice. So you don't have to be a hero in one day. If you've never fasted before, how about you fast for the first 5 hours of the day? Don't try to look online, 24-hour fasting. If you've never done it before, practice your way there. But ask God as you read this, what is it that you're asking me to pay attention to? And then I want you to create a don't do list. This is not your to-do list. This is your don't do list. This is what you're going to ask God for the grace. Titus 2 verse 12 says, grace teaches us to say no. You're going to ask God for the grace to say no to these things. Grace. What did I say? Grace. Not willpower. Grace. Because willpower won't get you anywhere. Ask God for the grace to say no to perhaps a habit that's taking time away from being with Him. Maybe it's a digital distraction. Maybe it's on social media too much, or perhaps too much screen time, too much television, too much news time. Whatever it is, ask God to say no to habits in your life that's taking away time from God. It could be a commitment that you've committed to that's draining your time. It could be something as simple as, me and my buddy, we go, I don't know, play tennis. But maybe you go for the first, 5 hours of the day. I remember one of my members one time, I said, hey, can I meet with you at 2? He said, Pastor, from 9 to 3, I'm at golf. They're not here, so I can talk about them. I said, wow, that's a lot of time. What is it in your life that's taking away time that you could be with God? Put it on your don't do list. So here are the two things. Matthew 5:7, God, what is one practice I can start implementing in my life? And what is one thing I can take away from my life? And you need grace for both. If you're new to Christianity, you're new to this church, you're new to what it means to follow Jesus, I invite you to starting point. That could be your next step. Happens on the second and fourth Thursdays. We get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to follow Jesus. So I'd love for you to join. And then last week you heard about this and want to keep it in your mind. We're also launching gathering groups, gathering lunches. If you've been thinking about it, I want you to think about who else I can partner with. Who can I get with to put on a lunch and invite someone else? Because here's the thing about Christianity. In order to practice well, you need cheerleaders. Doesn't practice go easier when someone else is encouraging you? We can't do this on our own. We need each other. That's your homework. Take following Jesus seriously, and your life with God would never be the same.